Let's talk about some of the questions which have been sent in by our listeners, because it is an international break. Therefore, it's about time we answer some of our questions from our most loyal listeners. And we'll start with this one from Lee on Instagram, who asks, is this the most open championship season we've ever had? Well, he actually says in a while. So with that being said, Justin, what do we think?
This is interesting because I think you can look at what we've got in front of us and suggest that it is. But it's also really important to remember we're 9 games in. Just adding a bit of context, though, to it. This time last year, Sunderland, Burnley and Leeds were all in the top 4. They all won promotion, of course. Cardiff, Portsmouth, Preston, they were all in the bottom 3 at the time and all had the threat of relegation with around 4 games to go. Cardiff obviously went down. The year before that, Leicester, Ipswich were both in the top 2. Leeds and Southampton were sitting 9th and 10th. So again, there's a bit of openness there if you're categorising like that. But with this year, it feels like it's way more open and therefore I think probably more competitive because we have the parachute payments not even in the top 6 currently. But with that, I think the points tally specifically this season, I think it will be 90 or less. That's the indicator I'm getting. I don't think it's going to be a high threshold for winning automatic promotion this season. But does that make it more open? No. I think it makes it more competitive.
I think they go hand in hand, really, don't they? I think it's definitely looking competitive. I think it's probably looking like it's one of the most open we've had in a while as well. Just looking at the table, 9 games in, it's still early stages, but that's still a fair few games. It's not like we're right at the start of the season still. And we've got just 6 points separating 3rd and 18th, which is a bit mad. And we've got Coventry who are top with 19 points. And that's actually lower than the league leader at this stage of the season in 14 of the previous 20 championship campaigns, which just goes to show, as good as Coventry have been this season, that they're not exactly dominating compared to previous teams. As far as will it be open as time goes on, I think Ipswich are just starting to really stretch their legs. So I could definitely see them beginning to match the pre-season expectations almost everyone had for them in the near future. But second place may very well be up for grabs. The other teams that were being predicted to finish in the top 2 this season, with your Birminghams, your Southamptons, your Sheffield Uniteds, none of them have started well. One even more so than the others. Obviously, Coventry are the overwhelming favourites to go up along with Ipswich right now, but can they maintain this over another 37 games? Who knows? Leicester are lurking around the top 2, but they've got a potential points deduction on the way. And that's not even talking about the top 6, which could be an absolute free-for-all this season, which I think is very exciting. So who knows? Maybe someone could go up automatically who no one expected. Maybe we could see all sorts of teams getting in the top 6, maybe even some people's dark horses, Justin. So, yeah, I think in terms of the promotion race, yeah, it could very well be the most open we've had in a long time.
I think that's where there's a difference, because my definition of it being open is pretty much anyone can do anything in the division. That's why I think it's a slight difference it being competitive, because with competitive there's going to be 5 or 6 teams gunning for top 2 with a few games to go. Likewise at the bottom of the table. I don't think you can really say things are open until there's 10 games to go and the team in 12 has a mathematical chance of finishing the playoffs, but also has a mathematical chance of dropping into the bottom 3. I think it being more competitive is probably where I come into it, or where my angle is because that's what you want to see, because ultimately the parachute payment teams in previous years, as we know, has made the league not so competitive. And therefore it's not been an open league. Whereas now what we're seeing is parachute payment teams are underperforming. It's way more competitive, but as you said, the points threshold that we've got right now is way lower than ones we've had in many other seasons. And that's why I think we're going to have a lower points tally this season. Therefore, things are going to be way more competitive, which is what we want. Is it open? I don't think it is, because I don't think Sheffield Wednesday have a chance of getting promoted, for example. That's where you start to draw in openness. I know it's an extreme example, but that's where I think you draw in openness is teams that are tipped for relegation have a chance of getting promoted as well.
Yeah, but I don't think that's realistic in any season, really. I think open and competitive are 2 very different things, because I think if the division is the most competitive it's been in a while, then you could see your teams like your Sheffield Wednesdays, for example, potentially beating someone like your Ipswiches or your Coventrys, and that would be a very competitive league. And I think in a way we have kind of seen that already, that maybe it is the most competitive in terms of how open it is. Then it's difficult to say with just 9 games in whether your Ipswich's, your Southampton's, your basically the parachute payment teams you were mentioning there, whether they will go on to be promoted or not, because there's still a long way to go. I'd be surprised if Southampton continue to struggle as much as they are. I think one argument against how open the league is this season is because open would imply anyone could go up and anyone could go down. And while Sheffield United might be living up to the anyone could go down part of that phrase at the moment, I am seeing the 3 teams above them, Wednesday, Oxford and Blackburn. And I'm thinking, that wouldn't surprise me if that was the case in May. But hey, it's a long way to go, isn't it? But I think you could definitely say it's the most open and the most competitive division we've had in several years.
And that's the important thing. That's the positive you've got to take away from it is, whilst I will sit and disagree that I think it's open, it is certainly more competitive. And I think it being more competitive makes it way more attractive than it probably is perceived to be, because obviously teams you expect to win promotion always win promotion. You don't really want that. Whereas now we've got Coventry sitting top. I wouldn't say they're surprising everybody because they've got a very good squad. They're capable of competing for the automatics. But with that, I think this is a question. It's definitely worth revisiting in March just to see what carnage we've had and what we've got in front of us, because I think that's where you can truly define whether or not it's open. Is you hit March and see who's in the running for what.
It's undeniably going to be exciting, isn't it? Because the Championship always is. And this season may be one of the most exciting we've had in a while. Let's go to this question from Tom on Twitter, who wants to know, what's the biggest what-if moment in Championship history? There's several different ways you can come at this one, Justin. I'm interested to see how you've gone at it.
I've got 3 examples, and they're all team-based. I think that the biggest one is... The most obvious one is Richard Keogh against QPR, right?
Yeah.
The Zamora moment. What happens to QPR? We all know they took the piss with FFP a little bit at the time, paid a record fine, as we know. Derby were just starting on their journey before Mel Morris fucked everything. They were just starting on their journey where there was great recruitment. Something that's vastly overlooked is the head of recruitment at Derby at the time was Paul Winstanley. He masterminded Brighton's recruitment. In recent years, he's now at Chelsea. So they were in a really good place to push on. So what could have happened to Derby? The other very obvious one is the playoff final between Aston Villa and Derby, because Derby go into administration. But if the coins flipped on the other side, Villa probably would have had that scenario as well.
That's exactly what I've written down, Justin. Yeah. I had both those examples there, but the Villa one I can go into a bit more detail on, because that was the most clear and obvious one for me. Because as you say, Aston Villa, but everyone knows Aston Villa are doing pretty well for themselves nowadays. They've not had a great start to the Premier League season, but in recent years been competing in Europe, challenging for the top 4 over the last few seasons. However, things could have been very different if they didn't win that playoff final, couldn't they? Because they had lost 179 million over their 3 seasons in the Championship. But for every £100 they received in income, they were paying £175 in wages alone. So had they not gone up, they almost certainly would have been given a points deduction and had to massively cut their squad. So they, put it this way, if they didn't get promoted in that playoff final, they definitely would have gone up the season afterwards, and we may have even been talking about them going down to League One, possibly even lower than that. All of which is obviously what's happened to Derby, who lost that playoff final, which makes it all the more interesting, because if they had won, then they probably wouldn't have suffered all the issues they've had since then, and maybe would still have Mel Morris as their owner, which is a bit mad to think of. But yeah, the bottom line is it would have been very different for both those clubs if the result was the other way around. But I know you can say that about every playoff final. However, that is by far the best example, isn't it?
It's kind of weird, because are Villa better off for it? Yes. Are Derby better off for it? Yes. Because ultimately what trailed after that was a skirmish with going out of existence for Derby. But also they're in a much better place with a much more sustainable model that is probably going to bring about more long-term success through sustainability. The other side of that I wanted to bring up is and I'm sure Sheffield United fans will suggest that this is a bigger what-if moment, not in the Championship, but this involves Villa.
I know what you're going to say.
The goal line technology failing. The goal line technology failing, because Sheffield United, had they won that, they could have gone on, because they dropped off in that at the end of that season, they could have gone on to qualify for Europe if form doesn't drop and they pick up 3 points. This is in the Premier League. This is during the COVID extra bit during the summer, and of course Villa could have gone down. So that's a big what if moment as well. So arguably Villa screwed over two clubs currently in the Championship right now. So big middle finger there. The other one I wanted to mention, Ryan, is the Paul Caddis last-minute equaliser for Birmingham against Bolton. The history there is obviously then owner Carson Young still owned the club. He had his assets frozen for bad things. Leave it there. Lee Clark had to sell players to generate cash flow that season. Obviously, the Paul Caddis equalisers, best limbs you'll ever see. That summer, the club goes into a transfer embargo, obviously because of the ownership issues that Carson Young was involved in. But what could have happened? What would have happened if income had dropped seriously low with the relegation to League One, to the third tier? Because ownership issues would go on until 2016 when they were eventually taken over, and then more ownership issues came about. But I do think it could have been seriously bad for Birmingham in that situation.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. I don't think many Blues fans would disagree with you on that. I think they're all fine examples of biggest what-if moments, because what would have happened to those clubs if things were a bit different could be like completely transformative. I suppose the only other way you can really come at this is if so-and-so put away a chance, or if a certain manager didn't get sacked. And when I think of certain managers who shouldn't have been sacked but were, a good example of that, I suppose, is Gary Rowett with Birmingham City as well in the 2016-17 season, when they were absolutely flying, and then they sacked him and got in Gianfranco Zola and absolutely tanked. So that's another way of coming at it, because, well, Birmingham may have not gone up anyway, but their next few years after that, which weren't very successful, could have been very different if they left the control of the club in the hands of Mr. Rowett. But that's just another way of thinking about it. I don't know if you've got any instant feelings on any ideas like that, Justin.
I'm trying to think back. I think the obvious bias is Steve McLaren flirting with Newcastle, and that ultimately derailing Derby's promotion run in 2015. Because obviously they were top of the league and then they finished 8th. And now a lot of that is the finger is pointed at Steve McLaren. Steve McLaren, I think it's more of a what if moment for Steve McLaren, because his career was on a resurgence at that point. Derby finished 8th, he gets sacked, he gets a Newcastle job, gets sacked just a few months later, and then he never really recovers. Had he not done all the eye fluttering with old Newcastle and got Derby into the Premier League, his career could have been in a very different position right now.
Yeah, and there may be other managers who fit that category who we may talk about after this break, Justin, because we'll have a quick break now. After that, we'll talk about managers who have nuked their own careers and how we're feeling about John Eustace and Derby County after their rough start to the season. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. Before we get on to some more of your questions, this is High Alert. Ladies and gents, producer Tom, if you could put a siren in the background of this, please, because this is your last chance to vote for us as Best Football League Podcast at the Football Content Awards. Voting closes by the end of today. So if you're listening to this after Sunday, it's too late. So please take 5 seconds of your time to vote for us. Link is in the description of this episode. You'll find a link to the voting page. All you need to do is scroll down to Podcasts, then Football League. All votes will be greatly appreciated. So thank you if you have done so already. Please take the time to do so if you haven't. And then, Justin, we nervously wait until the actual ceremony. But let's get on to some more questions from our listeners. This is from Adam on our Patreon. He wants to know, have our opinions changed on John Eustace and Derby's prospects after their start to the season? Yes, considering some people were bigging up Derby as maybe an outsider for the top 6 this season. Just 1 win from 9 games, currently on 8 points, sat 20th, Justin. How are we feeling about Derby's start?
I'm interested because I'm the pessimist, so I think many listeners will understand or know what I'm probably going to say next. So I'm more interested to hear what you think first, because you're borderline Jed from Alan Partridge with John Eustace. You may or may not have a tattoo of John Eustace on your chest. Please confirm or deny.
I don't have a tattoo of John Eustace or any manager, for that matter, on my chest. Whether I'm that much of a fan of John Eustace, I don't know. I think I was more of a fanboy of Kieran McKenna back in the day. But John Eustace, it's definitely someone I'm a fan of, maybe not to that extent. I don't think my opinions have dramatically changed, to be honest, because it is just 9 games. I don't think that's a big enough sample size unless something is very clearly not right, like we saw with Sheffield United earlier this season, and still now, actually. Because, look, Derby have not been great so far, but it hasn't been that bad. I don't think injuries have helped. There have been some tactical things from John Eustace, which I think he could be better with. At times, Derby can be a bit one-dimensional. At times, he could definitely be more proactive with changes when something quite clearly isn't working. And there's also some quite clear problems with the games themselves so far. Derby have conceded the first goal in every game this season, bar one. They've lost the shot count in literally every game as well. So that's not great. And that all sounds a bit doom and gloom when it comes to Derby season so far. But I think there have been some signs that Derby are not that far off. I think the Southampton game last weekend was definitely their best performance of the season. They were a minute away from winning at Ipswich and have won twice at West Brom this season. And also got to be kept in mind, 6 of their 9 games so far have been against sides currently in the top 10. 5 of their next 6 are against sides in the bottom 10. So with that being said, I would earmark Derby as a side to improve after this international break, because I think the signs are that they are getting better and the fixtures are easing up after that. So that's the hopeful side of things. Justin, go on, give us your pessimistic side.
Going in. No, it's one of them where I could easily go in, because I've been very disappointed with what I've seen of Derby so far. Does that mean my opinions change? No, because I do still rate John Eustace very, very highly, but that doesn't hide the fact that I've been really disappointed with what I've seen from his team so far. So as I say, it's not aggressively changed my opinion. I don't understand why they've not been hard to break down, for example. They've been really poor defensively. Teams have had a bit of joy playing against them, I think. And you mentioned the Southampton game. That was a marked improvement. They were super direct, which I'd be honest, Ryan, I absolutely loved. I really, really enjoyed it. But I don't think if Ross Stewart stays on the pitch for Southampton, I think they score a second before half-time and kill the game, way before Derby get their equaliser. So I think that's how balanced I think mentality is at the moment. I fully understand blending new players in. It's going to take time. I fully understand that they've had injuries, but defensively, defensive shape, work out of possession, I think from the games that I've seen and covered so far this season, they've been the worst team in the division. Even Sheffield United, I think, have actually had some semblance of organisation and have been a difficult side to break down, despite being hopeless going forwards. I don't think Derby have been difficult to break down at all. And I think another stat that caught my eye recently is they've had there's been 6 or 7 games this season where they've not had a shot in the first half, shot on target in the first half, and that's not good enough for me. And if you're not good enough defensively, then there needs to be improvements. So my opinion could change over the next few games before the next international break on John Eustace if things don't improve, because he's been backed. It's a good squad. He needs to be doing better.
Yeah, I was expecting you to go in on him, but I think everything you said there is perfectly fair, Justin. I think defensively, I have been surprised at how poor Derby have been. I think they are starting to improve to an extent on that count, but slow starters, yeah, absolutely, as you say, not having a shot on target in a lot of games in the first half, conceding first in just about every game, that's not very good. And we were bigging up Derby's summer recruitment, saying it's the best summer that any club has had in the Championship, or one of the best, at the very least. And I still think all that bears true. Now, there's a lot of players to gel into the squad. That has got to be taken into account here, because that's a lot easier said than done. And that will take time. So that's why I think Derby should probably be looking to improve after this next international break. But admittedly, the first 9 games haven't been great. Are the alarm bells going off for me? Not at all at this very moment. We're 9 games in. It's not a big enough sample size. But I think all the concerns that you've said there and I've said are perfectly legitimate. John Eustace probably recognises that as well, because it's John Eustace. He's a very switched on guy. He's done brilliant jobs in the last 2 or 3 seasons now in the Championship, and I have faith in him being able to turn that around. So, answering the other part of the question, have our opinions changed on John Eustace? Not really for me either. I don't know if you got opinion on that, Justin?
No. I mentioned that at the start of my point. My opinion hasn't changed on John Eustace because I still do rate him, but you can have a bad few games, can't you? It's just disappointing that he's come at the start of the season after such a good summer of backing. He's not helped by not having any natural width in his team, but again, that's not to take away from the fact that they should be defensively better. Because if you're not scoring, just don't bloody concede. But they concede a lot, and that's really not good enough. The difference is Paul Warne's team last season was getting results in the first 10 or so games, but this team isn't. So that's the disappointment. That's the comparison we've got. Have my opinions changed on Derby where they finish the season? No, I still think it's around mid-table, lower mid-table. I still think that's progress.
Phil on Twitter has this question. What's the best example of a manager nuking their own career? Something that's actually fairly common in the Championship. Yeah. I imagine we've got the same answer for this, Justin. Shall we say it at the same time?
I don't think we do. I think you've maybe got a more recent one, but we can say it at the same time.
Right. 3, 2, 1. Mick Beale.
Billy Davis. I knew you'd go for Mick Beale. I knew you'd go for Mick Beale.
Go on, I'll go through Mick Beale first of all, because that seems like the most obvious one to me. I think it would be a bit mad now to go back in time and look at the excitement around Mick Beale as a coach when he first came in at QPR, because obviously a lot of water has gone under the bridge since then. But he was seen as such an exciting appointment and did unbelievably well initially. And then came the fiasco where, when he was at QPR, he was approached by Wolves. He rejected them and said, I can't be the first one to jump this ship. And then I believe it was 39 days later, he jumped the ship to go to Rangers. And that went terribly. And then he went to Sunderland and did terribly there as well. And he didn't help himself either with own goal after own goal when speaking to the press. The most memorable one for me being insinuating that Sunderland fans didn't like him because he's Southern. That was while he was still the manager there, by the way. And it's got to be pointed out, from the start of his QPR spell to the end of his Sunderland spell, the whole period was, a year and a half, just over that. So it really was what was such a brief career, because I'm not sure he's going to get another Championship job anytime soon. But it is a bit mad, really, how he went from this promising, young, exciting coach to struggling to get a Championship job in the space of a year and a half. But the thing is, I don't think he's a bad coach. He might not even be a bad manager for that matter. His PR was just so bad that it made everything in terms of the results look so much worse, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, the PR aspect is important, which is why I brought in Billy Davis, but more on Mick Beale is that it's such a shame, because he was a likeable character in his, I said the early days at QPR. There wasn't any other days at QPR. It was just early days at QPR. He was a likeable character, and you saw...
I remember us praising him, Justin, when he said those words that he can't be the first one to jump the ship to go to Wolves. I was like, wow, this is a nice breath of fresh air. And I was really, really impressed. And then it all went to shit a matter of days later.
Yeah, it did. It's quite interesting that you view his Rangers spell as a disaster, despite him having a 72% win record. Russell Mine's Rangers spell,
though, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but Russell Mine's Rangers spell was a disaster. I mean, what's below a disaster? You know what I mean? That's the difference. But with Beale, it's one of those where I think it's lost potential, because I don't think that QPR team could have been really special, but what could have been? You know, could they have been on this trajectory that they're on now way sooner than now? Essentially, they're on an upwards trajectory, and that's positive. And I think with Mick Beale, they were laying the foundations for that. So it's a shame we didn't get to see that prosper, because what we had after that was Gareth Ainsworth, and that wasn't great. It really wasn't. And it took them a while to recover from it until now, as I say. So with Bill, it's such a shame it didn't work out. I think there's an element of him being really poorly advised, him making some really bad decisions, and ultimately his career as a coach, or head coach, dropped way sooner than anyone would have probably
being really
thought.
Poorly advised by his own brain, I think, when it comes to some of his PR own goals as well. Yeah. And now he's gone from being a really promising young coach who, I mean, Wolves were in the Premier League at the time. He was attracting interest from Premier League clubs to be a manager there.
Yeah.
And then here he is struggling to get a championship job, and is probably hoping Steven Gerrard gets the Rangers job, I think, isn't he? But let's talk about the one you were going to say, Justin. Billy Davies, the Championship OG legend.
Going to tread carefully because I'm still worried about legal trouble. He's a volatile character, is Billy Davies. I think that's what makes him such a compelling character, and one that I am massively, massively interested in. But he became untouchable because I think of how outspoken he became at Nottingham Forest. But honestly, he stands with one of the most successful managers in the Championship ever, I think. Got to the playoffs with Preston twice. He won them with Derby. Got to the playoffs twice with Forest, and then it unravelled so quickly. I mean, he got sacked off the back of getting into the playoffs with Forest, and then they went for Steve McLaren, and it all went tits very quickly for both of them, Forest and Billy Davies. But there were rumours of him dismissing staff at Forest, long-term staff that was done without explanation. He banned journalists. This is quite from The Guardian. They suggested that he had self-destructive insecurities and obsessions with conspiracy theories and old grudges that ultimately shattered his reputation, allegedly. So there's a big myriad of evidence that Billy Davies became a very paranoid individual, and that ultimately became that he stopped, I wouldn't say progressing as a manager, but I stopped him getting any other championship jobs or anywhere else up until very, very recently.
Yeah. Billy Davies, boy, what a legend. And a lot of people will be listening to this, and they probably don't even remember Billy Davies because it's been a long time since he last had a job in the Championship. But I'm just looking at the numbers now, Justin. Out of every manager in Championship history who's managed over 250 games, he's got the second best points per game.
Yep.
Which is insane, really, isn't it? Only Chris Hughton's got better than him. So the fact that Billy Davies has that to his name, but hasn't had a job now since 2014, despite him actively wanting a job, by the way, I believe he's now like a director of football at somewhere.
Yeah, he's like head of technical coaching at Greenock Morton.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting. But it's taken him this long to get another job, but it's all because of the reasons you mentioned there, Justin, because he was so outwardly outspoken against his own owners. And I remember speaking to Simon Cox, who used to play under Billy Davies at Nottingham Forest, and I asked him about him, and he said he's the most paranoid man in football. So if it's one of your own players saying that, then you can only imagine what else we haven't even mentioned right here, because he's he definitely he was perhaps his own worst enemy at times, put it that way. Justin, we'll have another break. After that, we'll talk about rules we would change in football and the worst haircuts in Championship history. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. What a roller coaster this has been so far, answering the questions from our listeners. And this next one is from Randy on our Patreon. He asks, if you could change one rule in football, what would it be? Justin?
Do you want my serious one or my crazy one?
I'd like your serious one first of all, I think, please.
Okay. Very serious.
Actually, let's just get the crazy one out of the way.
Oh, fine. League Cup. Early rounds, they're irritating. They're not interesting at all.
Let's be honest. It's not a rule, though, is it?
No, but this is where you make them interesting. You change the rules. Right, you change the rules. Let's just make it 8v8.
Fine. Okay, let's go to your serious one now, because I've had enough already.
Handball. It's obvious. Yeah. Handball's pissing me off. It really is, because you try and exert an opinion on a handball incident, and then you just get a myriad of abuse, people disagreeing with you. And it's like, well, actually, no, it's just incredibly subjective. It's incredibly subjective. So if it's very subjective for us to discuss, how difficult is it for a referee to make a decision on whether a ball is hit a hand deliberately, not deliberately, whether it's your arms in front of your body, whether it's impacting play? Why? I'm getting confused just relaying the different stages of what you need to consider. So essentially, deliberate, not deliberate, too subjective. If it hits your arm or your hand, it's handball. If your arm is by your side or in front of your body, then it's not handball. I think you've got to really simplify what is a very simple rule, or should be a simple rule.
Yeah, the handball rule was the first one that came to my mind for me, because it definitely needs looking at, mainly because I think people just don't understand it anymore. It's so confusing. It's even more confusing in the Premier League when you've got VAR and everything basically overanalyzing it. And then you're like, surely that's not handball, but then VAR overturns it and says, actually, by the letter of the law, it is. So, yeah, handball, I don't understand at all nowadays. Kind of in a similar vein, I, for a long time, have thought that penalties need reassessing. And what I mean by that is often the punishment doesn't fit the crime for me. So with a penalty, you've got an average of a 75% chance, I think, of scoring a goal. And the vast majority of fouls / handballs or whatever aren't worthy of that punishment. Simple as that. Occasionally it is, don't get me wrong, but most of the time it's not. I think a great example of that actually was the Hull Sheffield United game last weekend. Sheffield United got a penalty in the 88th minute, and while it was definitely a foul, the Sheffield United player was not causing any problems because he had his back to the goal. He had several Hull players between him and the goal. He's only just in the box. He's at a very narrow angle. Sheffield United missed the penalty anyway, so maybe it's not the perfect example. But did that foul warrant a 75% chance of the other team scoring a goal? That's what I'm saying here. It definitely didn't. So that's one issue I've had for a long time. How do you change that? I don't know. I guess make the penalty area smaller, perhaps, or only give a penalty when it's a clear denial of a goal-scoring opportunity, and then you do indirect free kicks for other infringements. And I think we could all do with more indirect free kicks in our lives, couldn't we, Justin? But that's one thing that's annoyed me for a long, long time now.
I was disagreeing with you on all of it until you said indirect free kicks, and I was like, "Oh yeah, go on then." I think the way to potentially put that in play and enforce it is having a probability of shooting. That's annoyingly where XG comes into it, right? If you've got a higher percentage or high chance of or high XG on the shot that you're executing before you're fouled, then penalty, right? That's
XG
one way.
Is very subjective as well, which is why I would say indirect free kicks make more sense, because there's still a good chance of you scoring, but it's probably equal to wherever the foul takes place or handball takes place.
But on the other side of it, just to counterpoint the entire argument you just made, is we were just very frustrated at how confusing the handball and how subjective the handball rule is. All you're doing with that is, with the penalty situation, is creating a subjective scenario. It's the most black and white thing you've got in football. If you're fouled in the box, it's a penalty. Simple. Just don't foul in the box. That's it.
If we're talking about sport, I just look at it with sporting integrity. It just shouldn't be the case, really, where someone is in a position where it's causing no danger whatsoever, and they have what is almost certainly a guaranteed goal. But anyway, we'll leave that there. Let's go to this next one from Ryan on our Patreon, who asks, what's the best / worst food you've ever eaten at a stadium? You and I both frequent game goers, Justin. I imagine you've had some shit pies over the years.
In my entire lifetime, guess how many pies I've eaten at a stadium?
Is this post CrossFit or pre CrossFit?
Just generally, I've been going to live games since the year 2000. I had a season ticket at Derby for 23 years.
I'm going to say you've not had many.
I have had 2 pies.
Okay, fair enough.
This is the worst question to possibly face, but actually it's probably the best question to possibly face. I never eat at a stadium. I'm one of those. I'll get food before. For example, it was the playoff final against Villa. There's an Aldi just off Wembley Way. Went and got a pastry. And a cob. from Aldi, because it's going to cost me £4 as opposed to buying a burger for £11. That isn't what it should be. Let's be honest. The food, I think, at football, nine times out of 10 is, my opinion, is disgusting, and options are very limited.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree much with that. I think there's two answers for me on this. One is as a journalist and one is as a fan, because as a journalist going into the press rooms, the food tends to be a lot nicer. Norwich always had the best food. Delia has spoilt us over the years. I don't recall the club doing anything particularly horrendous in that regard. As a fan, I usually, if I do eat at a ground, I will venture to one of the vans outside and get a cheeseburger there, because for some reason they just hit different. I've just always preferred those to anything that's in a stadium, but I've also had some shit over the years. I was once at Coventry and had some chips which had zero potato in them. It was just fried something.
Yeah.
I remember it so vividly because it put me off chips for a while. It was absolutely gross. But the worst, and this is probably cheating because it's not in the UK, is when I was in America and went to an Atlanta United game. And this is a public service announcement for all American listeners. What the fuck do you do to your popcorn? It's absolutely minging, and it comes in this giant vat. It's yellow. It's absolutely rancid, Justin.
Yeah, well, I've never had popcorn elsewhere outside of the UK. I can't possibly. Did you put butter in it? It was just like slap butter in it. Is that what it was? Or?
I think it's butter, yeah. And
That's
it's
just
so
tasteless,
grim.
guys. Come on.
This wasn't tasteless. It was wrong. And they give you so much. You think how much popcorn is when you go to the cinema. I know popcorn's not actually as expensive as cinema prices, but it's just, what are they doing?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. One thing I know that Footy Scran on old social is that only tells you the best of the best, right? It doesn't.
Not always. It does do the bad ones as well.
But I'm just saying, because Derby comes up a lot, and they have this roast dinner thing. Never seen it advertised. I'm 90% sure it doesn't exist.
I know Hull City always come up trumps in that, don't they? I haven't been Hull in a while.
No, neither
but
have I.
Next time I go, I'll have to venture to some of the Footy Scran highlights. That's Hull City serve up.
Do you know what? Drop any photos you've got of your Footy Scran into the old Discord, guys, because I'm genuinely interested in knowing if it's all that bad. Am I missing out?
Second-tier patrons, sign up now for Footy Scran picks. Phil on our Patreon has the final question. What is the worst haircut of all time for a championship player? I actually struggled on this. I don't know if you've got a straightforward answer.
I do. Taribo West at Plymouth.
Yeah, of course, the GOAT. How could we forget?
But he had nothing funky going on with his hair. His hair was just receding. It was up at the sides. He'd lost it in the middle. It wasn't the funky Taribo West hair we came to know. He just looked like your average middle-aged accountant, to be honest with you. And if you're going to get Taribo, yes, 100% did. If
Plymouth?
At Plymouth, yeah. If you're getting Taribo West,
I see. Okay,
you want full Taribo West, not the accountant.
Fine, Taribo West. You want the Nigeria version where he had the blonde dreadlock stuff.
Yeah,
fine,
he's got blonde and green highlights going on. He's sometimes had pigtails. Incredible stuff. Lee Camp's top knot was honking as well. I will say that.
I forgot about that. That was good. Lyndon Dykes was the first one who came to me because he's had so many over the years. The highlight being when he once had the R9 diamond thing that he tried to replicate. I don't know if he ever actually played a game with it, but I respect him for the boldness that he has.
It's self-expression
when it comes to his haircuts over the years. The only other thing that I could come up with, Justin, is technically not a haircut, but it was Adam Clayton when he was at Huddersfield and he dyed his beard blue and white, which in one sense did look quite cool when he's playing football for Huddersfield. But then all I can think is outside on the street, he would look fucking mad.
Yeah. Yeah, but these footballers are eccentric, Ryan. Do you look at Taribo West? Man's got green pigtails.
Yeah.
Right. He looks crazy on a football pitch. Outside of the football pitch, he's going to look even more bonkers. So I just don't think they care. I would rather have Adam Clayton's blue and white beard than Lee Camp's top knot.
I think that's fair. Yeah. That's probably something I'm not going to disagree with you on. I've just searched Adam Clayton, and he said he decided to shave it off because his girlfriend Amanda did not like it, and he was hoping to get some attention from her for once. Which is apparently an actual comment that I've just Googled. But there we go, ladies and gents. This has been the Second-Tier Podcast, and this has been a Q&A to tie you over during the international break. If you're a Patreon subscriber or a YouTube community member, don't go anywhere. We've got the extended edition of the weekend show coming up, which we like to call Zamora Time. We'll be talking about Dele Alli, a former championship promotion winning captain on a free, and Lee Kemp. He's getting mentions in the normal show and in Zamora Time. If you're not a Patreon subscriber, sign up to get Zamora Time in every single weekend show. And for YouTube members, your Zamora Time is available exclusively to you as the next video uploaded to the channel. If you're not signed up yet, audio listeners can head over to patreon.com/second tier. Link is in the description of this episode. And for YouTube viewers, just hit the join icon right next to the subscribe button on our channel page. Otherwise, it's just about time for us on the Second Tier Podcast. We'll be back again on Thursday for a news roundup. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I'm Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.